And we are live on the Frugal Crafters YouTube channel. Excuse the furnace, it just kicked on, but it is winter in Maine, so I guess we just get used to that. I'm Lindsay here with Sarah.
Hi!
And we've troubleshooted a couple technical difficulties, so knock on wood, hopefully that's all we have to contend with today. We're going to paint some winter scenes today, and what we're going to do is Northern Lights. That's really what I wanted to paint. We're going to focus on this scene, but this is pretty quick, and the key here is not to mess around too much with your background. So while this background's drying, I'm going to show you a couple other techniques. This one I overworked a bit, but I just wanted to do a couple practice pieces to just make sure I was kind of in the swing of things before we went live today. This video is brought to you by jerrysartorama.com. I have links and a coupon code in the video description, and the coupon code they gave me to share is better than any of the coupon codes I've seen around lately. So if you are going to do some shopping, make sure you take advantage of that so you can save money on the non-sale items, because every little bit helps. And they also have gift cards if you don't know what to get that artist in your life, or you are shopping at the last minute. So some really wonderful options there. And also, if you enjoy painting winter scenes, my friend Angela Fair has a brand new watercolor course out. It's only $30 right now, and it's got 4 winter scenes that would be perfect for doing Christmas cards or holiday cards or just holiday decorations. It's beautiful. She is Canadian, and she sees the Northern Lights in person, and she does a really great job with them. One of her scenes is a cute little cabin with Northern Lights behind it, and she's got 3 others that go with it, and I would really check that out. There's a link in the video description if you want to learn more. She's a good friend. I met her because we both taught a craftsy class, and she's been very helpful to me getting my online school going. So sharing is caring. Want to share the love, and she's just a super gal, so go check her out. So what I've done beforehand is I have taped paper down to pieces of cardboard or foam core, I should say, and I got 3 pieces ready because you don't want to fuss with your background. You want to put the paint down, have it do its thing, and then leave it alone. Either dry it with a hairdryer or a heat tool, or just leave it be, because when you start fussing is when you kind of end up with something like this. So we're going to try to avoid any of those mistakes, and we're going to start off with this scene, and I'll show you the photograph that we're going by, and those photographs are available on my blog. I thought this was really pretty because this one has the general lighting, a little bit of burst of the kind of the whoosh of the lights, but it's not too complex. So that's where we're going to start off with. And what I want you to do is just get a piece of paper taped to a board. You don't want to tape it to your work surface because you need to be able to lift it and tip it and then set it somewhere while it dries. You need to tip it. So just if you're watching the replay, just pause it, go grab yourself a piece of cardboard, or you can even tape it to the back of like a watercolor pad or something, just something so that you can secure it down on all 4 sides, and so you can move it out of your way when you want to work on something else. Also, if you want to leave a comment, you can in chat. I'm just completely out of my...
It's alright.
If you want to ask a question, type the word question in all caps, and then type your question as normal, and Sarah will see it, or the moderators will see it, and they'll either relay it to me or they will answer it for you. So that's how you get your questions asked. And some people have asked me, how do I get into the chat? I don't see it when I'm watching. And I noticed on my old tablet, I was watching a YouTube live stream, and it said my app was too old to access the chat. So you might need to update an app. You definitely have to be logged in to YouTube to leave a comment, so we know who you are. But other than that, it should show up on the bottom of your screen. Sometimes you have to hold your, like if you usually hold your tablet like this, sometimes you have to hold it like that, and then the chat shows up on the bottom. So one of those little tricks ought to help you out. Did I forget anything?
I think you got it, and if you forgot it, someone else will remember it.
Yeah, moderators are good like that. Moderators can help you with pretty much anything you need. And hopefully the stream stays good and you can see everything clearly. So what I'm doing here, I know it's really, really bright. I have wet probably the top, I would say 3/4 of the paper. And you need this paper wet so our paint can move. I'm using M. Graham paints. You can use any brand you want. The only reason I'm using this is because I have a large area to mix. So it helps to have a big area to mix with. And I am going to just spray this and clean off a little space, just so I have a little room to work with. So the first color we're going to grab is Cad Yellow, or you could use Lemon Yellow or Hints of Yellow Light. You want just a kind of cool yellow. And we're going to add this down here, and I'm going to tip my paper so that it will flow a little bit. I'm going to bring that across like that. Then I'm going to rinse my brush. I'm going to grab some quinacridone red. You could also use magenta. Just you want a nice clean red here, and that's going to go in here and across. Quinacridones flow really well, so that's another good reason to use that color. And I'm going to just grab a little phthalo blue with that quinacridone red. Add that mix that is kind of a purpley color up here on the edge. And you want bright because we're going to be spraying this, so the colors are going to get lighter. So you want to make sure you put enough pigment down so you don't have to go back in and add more. Because when you go back in and you mess around with it, that's when you lose the beautiful effects. Rinsing my brush. I'm going to grab some phthalo green. Man, that furnace means business. I should have started the wood stove today.
We're all in denial.
I know.
Because we were so spoiled.
Yes, we were.
Our summer and fall, like it was nice.
And I'm adding in some phthalo blue. And I'm going to do a little bit more over here. I feel like I want a little more dark. Okay, so once you have the color in, you're going to grab your spray bottle and you are going to spray. You are going to let that drip. If you want a really strong area of light, you want to go in with a sprayer with an adjustable stream, and you want to have it set to like jet, and you want to go in and put those jet streams of white. They're going to give you that white area. So another technique that I tried, but it didn't work that great for me, but it might work well for you, was to use one of these little bottles. This is the Jane Davenport one. It's just a fine line bottle. They're also called oiler boilers, and that lets you direct that stream of water really well. The only drawback to that is I can't seem to use this guy without scratching the heck out of my paper with the tip of that. I don't know why. I don't think I'm touching the paper, but then when I look, I've got scrapes all over it, and that's what happened in this example right here. I was trying to get the swirly lines, but I ended up scratching my paper, and it did not look nice. So if you're going to try that, just be careful that's I've heard other people have that issue too. I know it's not just me, but even though you think you might be holding it far enough away, it's tricky. So then you just want to make sure you don't have any puddles. You want to get that excess paint off the tape. And while you're at it, you can, I just want to give this a couple good taps, really force that to flow. And then you can actually paint the snow, which is going to be down below. We're going to have some trees in between. And I'm just going to you can grab any round brush, any brush you're comfy with. And any of the colors that you've used in the sky can be put in the snow. Just, you want them kind of faint. And it's going to dry lighter, so I know it looks crazy bright right now, but it won't. If you see any like spots you think should be a little bit softer, you can also just spray them and let them flow. Try not to go back in and overwork. You want that to be really really kind of hands off. You don't want to see like the brush strokes or anything. You want it to be very very untouched looking. Just going into some watery color. If you might even be able to just pick it up off of your tape and drag it around. you get too much, you can go ahead and blot it. So to let this dry, I am going to tip it on something, and I'm just going to like lean it like that and let it dry. So that way we don't end up with the back runs. Hopefully any excess paint is going to just slide off and drip off. But I do want to make sure that I just kind of run my paper towel right along the edge of that tape so it can dry. So just to show you a difference between how bright it is when it's wet and how bright it is when it's dry, I'm going to show you the dry one just so you can see. Maybe if I put them on top of each other, you can kind of see how much it fades. Alright, so don't be afraid of the color here. I think it might even look a little bit brighter on camera, a little bit more intense on camera, especially that red. That red's really showing up really bright. So you want to wipe up your area. If you're working like on your kitchen table, you might just want to have like an old dish pan, something to catch the drips. But I have contact paper on my workspace. I'm just going to wipe it down. And we will work on background number 2. And that way we can let nature just take its course for the drying. You have any questions yet?
Yeah,
Okay.
you were...
Yeah, I've been gabbing, man.
No, it's okay. I didn't want to interrupt because you were talking about how to get the... Let me get back up to where...
We're going to be wetting our paper for this one as well. As soon as you find that question, just...
Yep, Amber Ranning. I always struggle getting paint from half pans onto my palette for mixing colors. I never get the color out of the brush. Any tips?
Spray your half pans with water about 5 minutes before you go to paint, and the color will come off a lot easier. And you can also switch to a stiffer brush for mixing, because that will help pull the pigment out of the pans a little better. So don't mix with your super soft brush, use a synthetic. Alright, so you want to wet your paper, and we're going to put our paint in kind of going in on the diagonal for this one. And I'll show you the photograph. I got a little too defined with mine, but there's the photograph, so you can see that. And it's on my blog too. If you want to see these or download them yourself, you can go over there and see the photos or get links to download them. I picked them up on Unsplash, and they are free to use for commercial use. Alright, so I'm going to start in with my quinacridone magenta, and I'm going to put this in the corner here. And if your first attempts don't come out that great, don't worry. It can take a little while to get used to how bold to make your colors. Now I'm adding a little phthalo blue to that. I'm going to make a nice violet. I like this quinacridone red. This is a M. Graham color. It's really pretty. It's almost got a bit of a coral tint to it, but yet it's still cool. It's almost an undefinable color. Now I'm working on wet paper, so these lines are going to fade out a little bit. I'm cleaning my brush. And I'm going to grab some of that cad yellow. Or you can use lemon yellow, any cool yellow for this. Remember, cooler colors are less likely to get muddy. That's why we're using cools. You start putting warm colors in here, and that's when you get muddy. So even though I've got that purple and yellow kind of mixing, they're all fairly cool colors. I used a cool blue for that mix, so we're not getting mud. And I'm going to use some phthalo green and drag that in here. Again, a very cool, clean green. And the furnace stopped. Hooray!
Must have been heating up the water.
Could be. Or heating up the house because I don't have the wood stove on today.
It's not that cold. I bet it was heating up the water tank. I betcha.
Could be. Alright.
Rolf de Coke. Sorry, I know I'm saying that wrong. When I try to paint wet into wet, the paper becomes very corrugated. Am I using too much water, or are these bumps just something that happens?
Oh, they happen. I mean, if the only way to really eliminate it is to stretch your paper, which is where you soak it and then you stick it down to a board with gummed tape. And as the paper dries, it becomes tight like a drum. And that's a good way to avoid that. But that's a little time consuming. You can also buy a block of paper, which is all bound on all four sides, or tape it down on all four sides. You still might get a little buckling. I mean, I've got a little bit, you can see that mine's a little bit bumpy. Or work with heavier paper, like 300 pound, but that gets kind of expensive. So, yeah, it happens. If it's really bothersome, then I would suggest learning how to stretch your paper, because that's cheaper than getting a block and you actually get better results. So now again, I'm going to go with my sprayer. And I want to guide my paint to flow diagonally. And I could actually try my stream sprayer, but this does take a lot of pigment out, so you have to be kind of deliberate with it, and you have to just kind of go with the flow and take what it gives you. And if I didn't mention it in the video description, this is a messy painting project. This would actually be really good for like your Dr. P.H. Martin inks or your liquid watercolors. That would be really excellent. And you may find that you like it dripping one way more than another, and that's fine. You can let it dry whichever way you want. And you might get it perfect on the first try. And if you do, great. If you don't, what you can do is you can actually use some white gouache or some bleed-proof white, and you can add some lighter streaks in there. So I put that down in the materials list as a just-in-case item. So because repainting these, it generally does not go well. You're better just to stick with what you got. But if you just go in with a little bit of white, you can kind of feather it in and get that pretty look. So I'm pretty happy with this. I'm going to set this aside to dry. Oh, by the way, the paper I'm working on is very inexpensive. Aqua Bee, 140 pound, 100% cotton paper. I get a 50 pack for about, I don't know, $13 or $14. So I was using that for my practices, and I'm like, well, I might as well do this for the actual thing, because now I know how it's going to behave. So I just wanted to give you that little tip. And excuse me while I find a place I can set this where a dog's not going to get dripped on.
That's all right.
Chewy, you're technicolored today. Yeah. Yeah, this doesn't look dangerous. I feel like it's hanging off of a shelf. We'll hope for the best there. Hope for the best. Okay, and the last one is the trickiest one. And this, we're going to have to rely on our spray bottle. And this is from the dollar store. Actually, no, it's from Martin's, but it was 99 cents. I see my little Martin's.
Better than the dollar
store.
Better
than the dollar store. But I switched it so I get a really, really fine stream. So if you have like a Windex bottle, they usually have any of those household cleaner bottles. If you wash them, they usually have that feature. So you don't have to go buy anything. If you've got one that's just about empty, just repurpose it. Okay, so we're going back to a landscape format again. And I haven't really, I usually clean my palette off before I do a tutorial, but I was just using the same colors, and I didn't want to waste it because we do go through a lot of paint when we're doing this. You know, we're pouring so much off that I just left my palette dirty till it's all done. So this one's a little trickier to do in watercolor because we're doing a technique where we need the paper really wet, and as you know, when the paper is really wet, it does not, the paint wants to go where it wants to go. It doesn't really take guidance very well. So what we're going to be doing is adding in our color, kind of blocking it in, then we're going to use our sprayer to try to get these swirly lines. So you're going to have to spray, pull the trigger while you're moving your spray bottle in these patterns. So if you want to practice that on something, first, like you take a piece of newspaper and you could practice spraying your stream in swirls, and you could see on the newsprint because you'd see where it's wet. You could practice that way. That's why I was thinking this would be a good idea, but I kept scratching the darn surface with the needle tip on this. So, you know, you might want to try that too. Hopefully you're a little bit more coordinated than I am, but those are just two suggestions for that. So we'll begin just by wetting our paper and adding in the color. I would leave the bottom part fairly dry if you want to get those mountains in later. I overdid it on my last one. But that's all right. I just wanted to get some practice for that one anyway. So kind of just wet your sky area. So I've just kind of made my horizon. I think you probably see that maybe if I tip it. There you go. You can see the line where that bead of water is. That's kind of my horizon line there. And I'm going to wet everything above it. Will you be able to come for a Black Friday paint-a-thon here? Or not paint-a-thon, but...
Paint-a-thon.
I mean, just actually a tutorial, not anything
yes.
extra long.
Yes.
Cool.
I have a physical therapy appointment at like 10 o'clock or something.
Oh, wow. On Black Friday. That's...
Yeah, but it's over on Union Street.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So it's not anywhere near Stillwater. And I asked the lady, I was like, how's traffic? She goes, it's really not that bad. And it's not till 10 o'clock in the morning. So
good.
They'll all be over at the mall area.
Yeah.
And I can take the back way, like, to the end of 395 and back around.
Yeah. Well, people always look like they're having a good time when they go out Black Friday shopping, but I just don't have the nerve.
I worked retail for too many years. Well, and most people really are fine, but man, you get some crazies that, my lord, they are, and I never understood it. I don't want to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning after eating Thanksgiving dinner.
I think a lot of people go out at night. They go out after, like, the dinners, you know.
Well, yeah, because they're opening, like, Target's going to be open at 6 o'clock Thanksgiving evening.
Oh, wow, and we couldn't do that in Maine for a long time. They wouldn't allow it. So I just made some swirls in with the yellow, because that's, I just want to make sure that it doesn't get too muddy. And now I'm going to go in with my phthalo green. And this, I'm just trying to figure out where I'm going to spray my water. I'm going to be spraying the water on these swirl areas, so it's just kind of giving me a little bit of practice of where things are going to go. And now I'm going to go in with some cerulean. That's a real soft, gentle blue. And it's actually a little bit of a warmer color, so I do want to kind of segregate it down here at the bottom of my picture.
And that ties in Aurora Borealis. I've never really understood the difference between cool and warm colors. Can you explain?
Like if you divided the color wheel in half and you had your blues and greens and violets, they would call those cool, and they'd call your yellows, reds, and oranges warm. But within every color, like red, for instance, you have cool reds and you have warm reds. Your cooler reds will usually be more transparent and they will mix cleaner. So cool red would be like an alizarin crimson, magenta, quinacridone rose, permanent rose, and a warm red would be vermilion, scarlet, those more tomato red colors. So it can refer to how you divide your color wheel up, but it can also refer to the undertones of the color you're using. Like a warm green would be like an olive or a sap, and a cool green would be like a phthalo blue or a phthalo green or a viridian. So it's basically what color neighbor is it closer to, if that makes sense. So if you have a green that's closer to blue, it's going to be cool. If you have a green that's closer to yellow, it's going to be warm because its color neighbor is warmer. This is ultramarine blue I'm adding in, which is also a fairly warm blue.
Kuroraka. I'm looking for a watercolor half pan in Opera Rose, Opera Pink. Is there a brand you can recommend?
Holbein makes a really nice opera. Most brands will have them. Winsor Newton. I have a Winsor Newton opera that's really pretty. They're all going to be fugitive, so just keep that in mind. But now this mix is my phthalo blue and quinacridone red. The same purple we made before. Add that over my ultramarine. It's very psychedelic looking.
Millie McIlvain, what do I need to buy to attach a piece of watercolor to? I see you have boards. What are they called?
I'm using foam core, but cardboard. I save old like watercolor pads, and I'll save the cardboard that comes on those. They're usually really good, or old watercolor blocks of really good cardboard that you can clip to. It really doesn't matter. You could use hardboard, but that's going to be heavier. Foam core doesn't have any texture to it, and it's really light. Or it doesn't have any texture to it, and it's really light, so that works really well. You can get it at the dollar store even if you don't want to order order a bunch. I'm adding some phthalo blue here and there because it's such a clean, dark color, and I know when I start spraying that, you know, some of the stains will remain and it will hold up to that. Okay.
Rolf, thank you for giving me just a quick name to call you that I can pronounce properly. There are not many gouache videos on the channel. Is watercolor better to work with or only a preference?
Oh, it's a preference. I do like to work with gouache. I should do more of that. But yeah, I prefer, I guess I'm in the habit of doing watercolor probably because I like all kinds of mediums. I'm probably just more in the habit of doing watercolor. So with this technique, it's going to be very much, you get one shot. So I'm going to be doing a short squirt, a long swirly squirt, a short squirt, and a squiggly squirt, or at least I'm going to try. So I'm going to try moving my spray bottle before I pull the trigger so that so I don't end up with a circle. I want to have a fluid line. So that's not very fluid, but it's really hard to aim this thing. Believe me when I tell you, it's not going to get better if you fuss with it. You've got to kind of...
Someone was asking about glazing. Glazing these, the sky, or would it...
I think if you were going to go in with, like, an opaque color, like if you're going to use white, you could glaze on the bursts. The lighter burst, I think that would work fine. But I think with a transparent color, you're going to get mud and you're going to end up lifting a lot of stuff that you would end up wanting to keep. I do want to just try to get that swirl a little bit. There we go. There, I think this one's going to be all right. And I'm going to get a rag to dry the tape. Try to keep a rag handy that is that's, you know, just used for mopping up water stuff. You don't want to be using a cleaning rag to do this to your painting in case you have dust or anything on it. You can lift with a paper towel, like if you know you want a lighter passage, and you can in this instance wipe your paper. I usually say blot and don't wipe, but you do need to wipe if you want to get a lighter like streak. So if you want to go in and just kind of
Bev Roberts, do you think it is better to avoid granulating pigments when painting the sky, or does it make any difference?
I don't think it makes a ton of difference. Usually your granulating pigments though are earth tones, with the exception of ultramarine blue. So those probably wouldn't be the colors that you would pick for this sort of sky anyway. Okay, now I could always go in with a little bit of bleed-proof white if I decide to after it dries, but for now I'm gonna tip it up like this and set it somewhere to dry, and we'll go back to that first one that we painted. I'll probably need to do a little drying on it, so if you have any questions, you can put them right in the chat.
Susan Petro, I bought the Yarka tube set from Amazon that I saw you use. My set says made in China. I thought they were Russian paints. Did I get the right set?
As far as I know, the Yarkas were all made in Russia, but maybe they might have just sent the recipe off to a factory to have them made in China. I don't have the box for mine anymore.
Yeah, because I think they get along, China and Russia, so maybe they're trading.
It could be, and I think also, I know like there's some German companies that like Schminke had sold their manufacturing process to Grumbacher back in the 1920s, so they could make the paints stateside, and they sold them under the Grumbacher name. So I mean that, you know, companies can have factories make their products, which happens, or it could just be the packaging's made in China, and that's why it says made in China on the box. I have no idea. Could be made in Russia and packaged in China. But see how they work. If they work good, then that's great. If they work bad, let me know so I can, you know, tell people not recommend those.
Steer them away.
Yeah.
Ella Catherine, I have a hard time understanding what people mean by opaque and transparent colors. Can you explain better?
Sure. Opaque means that you can't see through it, that light doesn't pass through it. So an opaque color would be like white, or some yellows in watercolor. Earth tones tend to be more opaque. And transparent colors are ones that you can see through. So, like if I was to have if I took a Sharpie and wrote a black line across a piece of watercolor paper and I painted over it with yellow, a lot of those yellows you'd be able to see on top of the black, but like red or some of these blues, most of the watercolors you wouldn't be able to see over the black line. So that's what's meant by opaque or transparent.
Amanda Dalton, what does watercolor series paints mean? I've heard that Series 7 is the best. Can you explain this?
Series 7, that's also a watercolor brush that's highly coveted by Winsor & Newton. Series is how expensive the pigments are used that make the paint. So when you're looking at a Series 1 color, like that would be like burnt sienna or yellow ochre, those are very inexpensive pigments, so they don't cost a lot to make. When you are looking at let's see, what's an expensive one? Cadmium yellow or cobalt blue. Those paints are more expensive, so they might be a series 3 or 4 because they cost more to make. So the prices are higher, the higher the series. And so the series, they're categorized by price. Basically, each series is a different price because of how expensive they are to make. So I'm going to make a really dark color here. I'm going to start with phthalo blue, because that's a nice transparent dark color. Your transparent colors tend to be more vivid and deep and dark as well. I'm going to add in some phthalo green. I have a consistency of cream here. I'll try to scrape off as much as I can so I don't waste it. And then I'm going to grab some quinacridone red. And so my dark is almost going to be like a black purple.
Rolf, when you paint with a limited set of paints, what criteria do you use to choose the colors?
I go for a warm and a cool version of each primary for the most part, and then I like a burnt sienna and yellow ochre just because they're very handy colors to have. And if I have room, I grab a sap green for convenience because I use a lot of it and I don't want to mix it every time. And usually sap green is not made from one of those those 6 primary colors, so it just has a nice warmth when it's made with like a pigment orange, or like when it's like an orange viridian mix. It has a nice earthiness to it. Okay, I'm going to start in with a flat brush. This is a Majestic, by the way, Royal and Line Nickel. I like to use these if I need a really dark color because they're not going to hold too much water, especially if I'm mixing. I'm going to go in and put in my tree line, the bottom of the tree line here. Tap up some branches. This is stuff in the background. Best to get this in one go so you don't have streaky lines.
Gilbert289, what brush are you currently using? I couldn't see the handle from
this
here.
This is a 1-inch Majestic by Royal and Line Nickel. I really like Royal and Line Nickel brushes. They're affordable and they have a great variety. A lot of faux sables they're coming out with now, which is really nice. I believe I know I'm going to say the wrong name. There's one is real sable. I don't know if it's there's espresso, I think is the name of one, and there's like it might be called Sable Tech. That's the fake one. They have real sables too. I quoted the wrong one the other day. So but you can check out their website. They have information on what all the brushes are made out of, and it's really tough to beat their prices and quality. Although the Mimic set is on sale for $24 right now, and it's usually like $50 on Jerry's, and the list price is like $100. So whenever that goes on sale, that's always nice for people.
Grave Lord Nito, I understand that a white surface is better to mix on, and I purchased a metal palette to mix on, but it still stains. Do you have any recommendations?
Magic erasers work really well for that. For the most part, I don't let the staining bother me too much, but I do find a magic eraser usually does the trick. And those are those sponges. You can get them at the grocery store, or even the dollar store has like their own version of them. They're just this weird white, like foamy material that cleans it really well. And now we're going to put in some actual branches and trees. Oh, the nice thing was, since we're talking about brushes, if you can find brushes with acrylic handles that are good quality, I really prefer them. For one, a lot of them have these scraper ends, so I can scratch up details in paintings. The other thing is, I am terribly absent-minded about leaving my brushes in water. And with a wooden brush, when you leave a brush in water, the wood can swell and then it chips the paint, and then the ferrule gets loose and it's not very fun to paint with anymore. So if you're absent-minded, it's a good quality to look for in a brush. For these trees that are going to be a little closer to us, I'm going to add a little bit more red into my mix, my quinacridone red, to warm it up. And I think I'm going to put a smidgen of my cad yellow in there too to give it a little bit of a brown hue. I don't know if you'll be able to tell on camera because it's awfully dark, but if I go in there.
Sherry Frescona Art, why is porcelain best for palettes? What makes it better than plastic?
Well, I wouldn't say better. I mean, it's personal preference, but porcelain does not stain. But then again, it also breaks, so it's better for like a home palette. And a plain old like porcelain plate from the dollar store is gonna do you just fine. I have some of the daisy ones. I really like the daisy, like flower, or called petal or flower petal or whatever palettes. Those are really nice because you do have some pretty good mixing area on them, and I only work with usually 4 to 7 colors at a time, so that's perfect for me. But I like to just mix on like a square plate sometimes, and it works great. And I just grabbed it at the Dollar Tree, so you don't have to spend a lot of money. It is a nice surface to mix on. The paints don't beat up. But once you get a palette that's older, like I've had this one for about 15 years, my paint's not beating up here. It takes a while to break it in, and I think people get frustrated when they get a new palette and their paint is beating. But it will get better. The more you use it, the more you clean it, the more abrasive the surface gets, and then it just grabs your paint better. It also might stain some more, but you know, that really doesn't affect when you're mixing. It's a stain on the palette is not going to affect your judgment for mixing that much, because you're going to be putting way more paint down than what the stain is.
Lama Hef, any suggestions for a very bright turquoise? I'm currently using Winsor & Newton Professionals and not enjoying it.
Mix, try, before you buy anything, try mixing phthalo green and phthalo blue, and that should give you a beautiful turquoise that you can add water to. Let's see, I'm trying to think what other brands is turquoise. I like the Yarka, makes a nice turquoise, and they're very affordable too. I like Cobalt Teal by, I like Core's Cobalt Teal, and I like Daniel Smith's Cobalt Teal. And you can get that in a stick, and it's less expensive than getting in the tube. Well, that's another thing about series colors. With the Daniel Smith line, if you can find it in a stick, they price them the same. And it's basically like a pan of watercolor. I don't notice any quality difference between their sticks and their tube paints for what I've used. So that's a good money-saving option, because you're getting the same thing, but you're paying less. And for me, it's more convenient because I like to work from dry pigments.
Brandon, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm just putting in a few tree trunks here with my number 8 round Majestic. You can use whatever you like. This was handy for me. The lower you put them down, the lower you start them, the higher you should make them, and that gives you perspective. So this one coming off the page, I can make this one go up a little bit higher, and it will just give a little more depth and scale to the piece.
Brandon Wilson, do you have any tips for when to use hot pressed versus cold pressed watercolor paper?
I generally use cold press most of the time, but whenever you want something really smooth, like if you're doing a botanical and you want to get more detail, go for your hot press. Cold press has more texture, so it's better for landscapes. Cold press is pretty much your all-around generally used paper. And then rough is really excellent for landscapes or anything where you don't want that much detail, because you're going to be your brush will skip over those hills and valleys in the paper. I feel like hot press is less forgiving. And I use it for rubber stamping a lot. Actually, that's what I use it mostly for.
Gravelord Nito, can you cut up the watercolor sticks and put them in a pan, or is the binder not good for that? That's
what it's best for. The watercolor sticks by Daniel Smith are really crappy for sketching with, but they're excellent for slicing off a piece and sticking it in your palette. Tapping on some foliage here, nothing too technical. Make sure you don't cover up all that sky that you work so hard to get. It's funny, I do notice a little bit of like a line going down my paper. I wonder if I had, I wonder if maybe that stream of water is so forceful that comes out of the sprayer, if that could even be scratching the paper.
Could be.
Yeah, I see a line right there. Maybe I just scraped it with the ferrule of the brush or something, but this is not the, best paper in the world. It's pretty good, but it's, definitely on the what I use for practice.
It hurts a little less if you make a
Yeah.
mistake. And not happy.
This is
with
not $10 a sheet.
Yeah.
And just keep on tapping until you've filled up your trees to your liking. We're going to finish this up. We're going to add some shadows under the trees, and then we're going to skip over to the next painting we have waiting. Oops, I was going right off the screen there. Sorry about that, guys.
Alexandra Manga, how is Jane D's travel brush? Is it worth getting? How does it close?
It closes by you pull it open and push it shut. I have done some work with it, and I have to say that I generally like Jane's products. That one in particular, though, it's like I honestly think it's a lipstick brush. And I think it was just repurposed, like a.
Oh.
Yeah, I think it's a lipstick brush, and I think that's actually what I'm going to do with mine is put it to my makeup kit. But it's because it's I don't think I have it within reach, but you pull it apart and the bristles pop out, and you push the two ends together and the bristles pop back in. The handle is hollow, so when I go to rinse my brush, it sucks so much water in the handle that I'm painting along, and then whoosh, a big like load of water gets on my paper. If I shake it, all this water comes out of it. So anytime you rinse it, it picks up water from your palette and it from your bucket, and it like dumps it all over your painting. So unless you're working in just a tiny little capful of water, which you could very well be if you're working with your travel palette out in the world, I think you're going to end up with some tragic accidents on your paintings. So I would pass on that, and it's $10. That's a little pricey. You could get a decent, like I just tried. There's different travel brushes that you can get that aren't very expensive, and also the bristles are really short on the Jane Davenport travel brush, so it doesn't hold as much water in the bristles. Holds plenty in the barrel where you don't want it, but it doesn't hold enough in the bristles to carry across your painting. You have to keep dipping, and the more times you dip in the water bucket, the more chance you get water up in the barrel of the brush, and it can cause you some problems. So for me, that product's a pass. But I think it's actually a great lip brush, and I'm going to stick it in my
So you could conceivably go somewhere and buy a lip brush and see if it works better.
You could do that. I actually did that one on Amazon. I bought a ELF lip brush for that purpose, but the spring inside of it went kaplooey, and
Right.
And it wasn't a good solution. I mean, those are meant for holding a thick waxy material, and watercolor is the opposite of that. So I think you're better off just to chop down a brush if you need to, or go with a water brush or one of the travel brushes that are made for traveling, that are short and have a cap.
Panana, do you ever struggle with perfectionism when watercoloring, and if so, how do you overcome it?
I generally don't. Sometimes you just got to let a painting go if it's, frustrating you or not working out. I'm not a perfectionist. I move on. If something is not, working out to my liking, then, I'll give myself permission to play with it and let what happens. But if it doesn't end up working out, then like these would be beautiful chopped up into bookmarks. If they don't turn out, you've got beautiful pigments there. And that's what I do. I don't let perfectionism have any role in my art. Clearly, you probably would realize if you watched any of my tutorials.
Sweet Michelle, where is the best site to find inspirational photos?
There are some that you can pay for, but for free ones, I like Paint My Photo, Unsplash, Pexels, and Pixabay. And then there are also paid sites that you can join. There are some Facebook groups too, but it always seems like there's some like crazy drama going on in those Facebook groups where people are sharing photos. So I don't
drama on Facebook.
So I don't partake of those groups.
Rolf, when you replace a pan of paint with tube paint, do you need to keep the tube paint moist between painting sessions?
No, you're best to let it dry right out. That will prevent mold. And just let it dry out. Just like it's the same stuff for the most part. I mean, Winsor & Newton will swear that their pan paint is different than their tube paint, but I think that's kind of a marketing ploy. Pretty much, it's the exact same thing. I mean, they do like extrude pans. They make the pans a little differently from some brands, but just let it dry. And what I did here was I just took a wet brush and I kind of wet along the where the branches are and just pulled out where the trunks met the snow and just pulled out some of that pigment to make a nice natural looking shadow.
Brenda Collins Deeks, working on Misty Forest from last week but couldn't get the trees to look like trees. Is there a technique, a particular brush, or practice till I balance the water between brush and paper?
The key to the painting from last week is to paint the tops of the trees and then you spritz the bottom of the trees, and really you're soaking it and you're letting that water pull the pigment down. So it could be you're being a little too timid with the spray bottle because it is a little freaky because you're really putting a lot of water there. All right, so I think this one is done. Does that look done to you, Sarah?
I think so. I think if you fuss with it more, it'll get overworked.
Another tip I wanted to share is if you ever have trouble with your tape or ripping your paper, first of all, you should let your painting completely dry. I'm not doing that. But you heat it with your heat tool or your hair dryer. The heat will loosen the adhesive and make it easier to remove. And that's also a great tip this time of year if you're wrapping presents and you have all these tags to get off of your, like price labels to get off of your things you bought, or maybe you have you bought some dishes for somebody and you want to take the sometimes they have labels on them, mugs and stuff. Heat it with the heat tool and that will take it right off. It works so wonderfully. So there's our first painting all done, and less texture in the background than the other ones we're going to do, but still gives you that kind of pretty Northern Lights look. So the next one is right here. And this one, you know what? I think that spray bottle is putting out such a spray that it's scratching my paper. I can clearly see lines on there. So maybe it's just the force of the water on these things. Maybe I wasn't scraping the top. It could be this paper because it's not a heavily sized paper. So
Good to know.
Maybe because I didn't use this and I used the spray bottle and I can see little lines. I bet that the force of that water coming out of there was just so much that it damaged the paper a little bit. So this, I'm actually pretty happy with this. I don't think I need to go in with any white, but I did go in white with this one. So if you want to try both techniques, you can. Actually, with this one, I had gone in with a little more color because I washed too much away when I sprayed it, and then I went in with the white. Maybe, I think I'm going to go in with white on the other one, so maybe I won't on this one because I like the way this background came out. I'm going to dry it really quick. If anyone has a strong preference, if they want to see me glaze some colors over and go in with white on this one, let me know.
I bet you they will.
Or otherwise, I'll do it on the other one because I think the other one really needs that. So I think this one is okay as it is.
Heather Cat Lady, if you scrape a watercolor stick, do the little granules create an effect similar to Brusho?
They really don't. You might be able to get a similar look with an Inktense block. But no, the watercolor stick is too heavy for it to just burst out like that. Your best bet is to, if you don't want to invest in a watercolor powder, there are a lot on the market right now, so the prices are coming down on like the craft quality ones, which I think are exactly the same as like the Brusho. If you don't want to invest in that, go to like your craft store and buy a tie-dye kit. You can sometimes get them on sale for like $5, and you want to get the ones that have like the yellow, cyan and magenta at least, and those will work really well. And you can mix some of those colors too if you want to get the multicolor effects. But that's the closest dupe that I've been able to find to the Brusho. Not the Rit dye doesn't quite give you the same effect. It's those tie-dye kits that have like a finer dye powder that seem to work a lot better. I just realized I have an oil painting down right next to where Chewie was laying. I'm so glad she didn't knock that onto herself.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if she did. She always finds wet paint wherever it is.
Stuck to her because that thing, I just finished it yesterday. It would just stick to her. So this one, we're just going to put on the dark trees like we did before, because I will do the white technique on the next one. Because that's kind of, the white technique is kind of a last chance scenario type. I'm going to use the same dark that I mixed, which was phthalo blue, phthalo green, and quinacridone red, and I'm going to throw in some trees. Again, I'll show you the photo reference that I used. I'm just going to get a few of these trees in and then fill in the bottom with a larger brush in the same dark color. I actually think this would be a kind of a fun one to do with like a brush pen of like a black ink. Actually, why don't we do that? Because this one was done with the paint, the dark that I mixed with the paint. Why don't I try, speaking of Jane Davenport, I'll use one of her brush pens. Because they're really fun. Is that black? Nope, that's metallic. That's like a metallic black. That'd be shiny. Actually, that'd probably be pretty
That'd
cool.
Be kind of cool.
You could also use like India ink with a brush. Let's see, this is just regular. No, I think that's a shiny one too. Holy cow. Where I just want my regular black one. Maybe I lost it. I don't think I did. Riveting footage. Anybody got a question while I'm searching?
Yes, let me pop back up to where the question was. David Saxoval, have you tried out the Mungyo watercolor paints?
You know, I haven't, but I'm pretty sure that they are the ones that make the paint for the Prima and Jane Davenport palettes. They make the I'm pretty sure, I can't say specifically because I don't work there, but I'm pretty sure they make like the oil pastels for Prima as well. They do a lot of private labeling, so I think that's the case. All right, actually, I don't think I have a Jane Davenport just plain black one. I don't think she makes one. I think all of them are colors because you could just fill an empty brush with black ink, I guess. So I'm actually gonna use this and see how that works. Why not? And I want to get kind of a bare deciduous tree over here. I'm working straight up and down. My brush is perpendicular rather to the paper. This would be good to do with a liner actually, but I'm committed now.
There's no going back.
No going back. I've already started this.
Hey, like you said, if worse comes to worse, it could turn into some beautiful bookmarks.
That's right. I like the record show people will pay $2 for a handmade bookmark. My husband was like, who's going to pay $2 for a handmade bookmark? I had a bunch to go over into my shop. And I'm like, well, gosh, I put so much work into these. I don't want to sell them for less. And they sold really well. Mm-hmm. Probably more than $2 worth of work in them because they weren't just cut up paintings. They were stamped and stuff. But still, it was kind of like, okay, cool. That's good because I didn't want to sell them for less than that.
Brenda Collins Deeks, could you use a lifting technique to get the white streaking effect in the sky?
I think you'd be best to try wiping it out while it's still wet, because if you went in and scrubbed and lifted, I think that you would end up with some, well, you might and you might not. I think you would be likely to end up with some bloom around the areas that you lifted. And I'm going to do a thick branch here. I think I'm going to make this tree shorter, even though it's not in the reference. I feel like I paint the same tree over and over again. I need to get a little bit more variety in my trees.
Want me to come up and bump your elbow?
Yeah, really. I should have had a big cup of coffee before I started. I'll make this one pretty quick because this is a very similar technique to what we were just doing. The book signing went really well last week.
Oh, that's right. Yes,
yeah.
It looked like you had a lot of people show up.
Yeah, the bookstore was really happy because I didn't know. I'm like, I don't know what's normal, you know. And the author was really happy, so I'm happy because
yay! Yay!
I had no idea
Sold a
what
bunch
to
of
expect.
books.
Yeah, they did. So I'm not sure if they're. I haven't checked to see if they're on Amazon or not yet, but I haven't heard.
Heather Cat Lady suggests you try your left hand.
Oh, that's a good idea. Oh wow, this is really weird. Oh yeah, I like it. You know what? I don't think this one is metallic. I think she must have come out with a regular flat black one in this. With the new markers.
All right, come on, fingers.
I was so glad to see the computer work since the kids aren't home and I have nobody to mooch a laptop on.
Matahari Sarah, the 3 top favorite watercolor brands.
Oh gosh. Oh boy. Gosh, it's hard to beat Daniel Smith. I only have probably like 10 of their colors. They're good. I like Mission Gold. I have the perfect a couple of their sets. I have their pure pigment set, but I really love their perfect pan set. It's just I don't recommend it very much because it's so expensive. When there are other brands on the market that are very close in quality that are cheaper. So I like that. I like Sennelier, but it's not for everyone. I love their paints. And they've actually, so you can find some deals on their paint too. So they're a tried and true brand. There's so many, it's so hard to pick. And I mean, when you get to professional watercolors, the differences are pretty small. And it comes down to a lot of personal preference, really. I'm not a huge fan of Winsor & Newton, and a lot of people consider them to be the best. They're paintable. There are a few like colors that I wouldn't want to use from them. I don't care for their sap green. I don't care for their burnt sienna because of the pigments they use for both of them. But I mean they're reliable, and I like their Cotman. I think their Cotman set's really reliable. I don't see a huge difference between their Cotman set for students and their professional set. I think that's probably the deal, because I love to recommend their Cotmans because they're easy to find and they're pretty affordable. But I do not see a huge quality difference going from their Cotmans to the professionals. And I'm actually going to really just fill this in. You could take any water brush and put some India ink in it if you want to try this technique. And you have a water brush laying around. Kind of fun, kind of different. Figure, why paint the same thing again? I mean, same technique for the trees. Might as well try something else.
Diane why did you say Sennelier is not for everyone?
Because a lot of people with watercolors, they want that super like whoosh of crazy intense color, and Sennelier's colors are more subtle. They layer really well though, so like if you like to work on a painting for a long time, you're not going to overwork it as easily as you might with other brands. But a lot of people, if they don't touch the paper and their paint doesn't go whoosh, then they're not happy. Oh, speaking of Core is really good. We used those last week. I like those a lot, but again, they're not for everyone because of how fluid they are. A lot of people don't want their paints to go whoosh when they, hit the paper. So, that's kind of personal preference there. I'm going to hit this with a dryer real quick so I can take the tape off and you can see the finished product here. That was kind of fun using that black ink because it just...
it looks cool.
Yeah, it was so immediate and so inky black.
You know what you should do is put a little glitter on some of the tips of the tree branches like it's a little snow.
Yes! Oh, I should do that.
If we have time. If we're not,
I might even have like a glitter pen handy.
Or that would work too. Just a little touch, like the northern lights are just gleaming off the snow a little bit.
I like that idea. Well, I got this glue pen at the last stamp show I went to because I saw this pretty technique where people were stamping and coloring it, and then they were taking the glue pen and just highlighting and then sprinkling it with glitter, and it looked like your water was moving and like trees were glistening and snow was glistening. So yeah.
People are a little surprised you didn't mention M. Graham.
Oh my gosh, I love it. They're my favorite, actually. Yeah, that's what we're using today. They're my favorite, actually. They were like the first like professional watercolor paints that I bought, and I took a chance on them because they were 40% less than the other brands, and they were bigger tubes at the local art store that I used to go to. So and I'm like, I love these, but it could have been just going from crappy paints to going to really awesome paints. I don't know. I mean, I had used professional paints before, but that was the first like time I really spent money on a full set of paints. I'm still using a lot of them too. I haven't had to replace many of them. Oh, right. So I might go. Let's get the next one done, and then maybe we'll come back to the glitter on this one because that I like that idea. That sounds fun. Was that your idea or somebody else's idea? That was mine. Sarah's idea. Sarah is running on all cylinders today.
Well, yes, as many cylinders I have, which aren't many.
So this here, and I see the scrapes. It's got to be that water spray. That is so crazy. I can't believe that water spray is so strong. Okay, so this is our photo reference. I have a few water speckles on there. So, and this was an inkjet printout, so that happens. But we can see what we're going for, and I am going to use a bleed-proof white for this technique. And I am just going to take a little out of my container. I don't like to work right from the container because I'm mixing it and I don't want to contaminate anything. So let me just find a clean brush that I can pull some out with. And gosh, find some clean spot in my palette. And that's going to be the tough part. Alright, so I took about probably like a pea-sized dollop. And I'm going to add a little water to that because on its own it's really, really opaque and strong. I almost thought it was like an acrylic paint when I first started using it because it was so strong. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in the darkest areas, and I'm going to probably blend it out with a fan brush, I think. So we've got an area here. We've got kind of a squiggle here. Kind of like painting smoke. I went camping with the 8th grade class. I woke up in the middle of the night and I thought I was seeing northern lights. I'm not sure. It was really the sky was light and it was kind of...
Did you forage for mushrooms in the woods?
No, I didn't. But I don't know if we'd see them up there. But it was up. It was in Eastport. It was up near Eastport, so maybe.
Could be.
I mean, it was further north than this. It was car camping. I'm like, yeah, I'm not sleeping on the ground in a tent. I threw some yoga mats in the back of my car and stayed in the car. I wish I brought an air mattress.
Thank goodness for air mattresses.
Yeah, that would have been
I'm too old
choice.
to sleep just straight on the ground anymore. Joey.
I can't believe how hard the floor of my car is. I was just like, man, I thought I should have, actually I probably should have just reclined a seat. That would have been more comfortable, but... Okay, so I've got the areas pretty much where I want them. I am going to go for a stiff hog brush here. I'm going to dampen it. I don't want a lot of water because I don't want any, I don't want to really loosen up the paint underneath. I just kind of want to be able to move this around and get it wispy looking. And that looks like it's going to work for me, so yay. Wanted to paint these for a while, but I'd never gotten around to it, and I thought I bet other people would like to know how to paint this, just like the mist last week. Something I'd always meant to do. You just don't want to introduce too much water or you could get some backgrounds. I know what you're looking for, Chewy. You're not going to find anything tasty down here. Crawling around, sniffing around.
Always trash sniffer.
Oh, Jackson cooked a pork tenderloin last night. That's probably what she smelled. There's probably like tin foil or something in there.
That's right. I know your game.
You just want to have a damp brush and just kind of try to drag it around without adding too much water. You pick up paint from underneath, just rinse your brush, blot it, and go back in. I think it's going to dry a little more transparent when you add water to it. So I think it's part of that glare that makes it look a little extra opaque. You might need to work it back and forth to get that to move without a lot of, since you don't have a lot of water on there. There, I think I like that. I think that looks pretty convincing. Maybe just a little bit. Maybe I'm gonna try applying some with the fan brush and see what sort of. I'm gonna start on the tape and drag it down so I don't have the starting marks of a fan brush, which have that kind of telltale curvy line. Maybe a little bit more off to the edge. I never was a fan of using white in my watercolor, but I think it's, you know, I don't like to also say never say never. I mean, I don't like to discount something because I really enjoyed using the bleed proof white. Even though this is not how it's designed to be used, it's more of a, it's supposed to be kind of for covering up and fixing, you know, obliterating mistakes, but I really like it as part of the medium. There, that was just the ethereal look that I want. And it also helped cover up some of those scratches that I ended up making with the spray bottle. So I guess if I do this again, I'm going to use a higher quality paper that won't be so susceptible to damage from that. But I never would have thought that would happen. So that was a teachable moment, a learnable moment or something. Did you have a question or no? Okay, cool. All right, so now we're going to just tint our snow. So I am going to grab just a smidgen of this magenta purple color, mostly magenta, a very little bit on my brush, add a little bit up here, because we did have a little bit there and there and there. And I could see that on the reference photo. I thought it was kind of unique and pretty, so I want that in there. And do a little bit over here too. We're going to be putting trees in, so don't worry about any like kind of dirty smudges that you might have. Just a good place for a crop of trees. And all I'm doing is just kind of grabbing colors that I see on my palette that I know I've used. I don't want a lot of color and I don't want super vivid color, so by going with this dirty color off my palette, it's just naturally going to make it a little bit more, more muted and natural looking. My fan brush wanted to shed. I've got a few sheddy little pieces. Get a little bit of this mixed purple here. I think when you put like blues and purples and pinks, it really looks like snow. I think those are the colors we're accustomed to seeing, even if we don't realize it. And now we'll do some foliage. I think I'm going to dry this really quick though, so I don't have any bleeding where I don't want it. I think I'd like to try maybe some decorative painting special effects brushes. So I'm going to grab some in a second here. I think maybe using a stippler might be a nice difference, so I don't paint the same tree a bazillion times again. There really isn't. We have like a couple distinct trees, like there, that little group. Everything else is pretty much just like tapped on texture. And I think a deerfoot stippler would do really well for that, which is more of a decorative painting brush, but I think you should use whatever's going to get the job done.
Use what you have, people.
Exactly.
Use what you have.
Grab that right now. Can I scooch in front
Yes.
of you? I'll just
In
walk
front,
in
back,
front of
front,
you.
back.
Yeah, right here. Oh my gosh, tripping over my own feet. Okay, I know I have one right here in this second, so I'll just grab this. Grab my interchangeables. I haven't used these in quite a while, but I knew this is a deerfoot stippler, so that's what I'm going to use. So a deerfoot stippler, it's like a round brush, but it's cut short on an angle, so you end up with it almost looks like a deer footprint. And this is just a little interchangeable set that I have from Fab Art that I'm going to use. And again, I'm just going here, I'm making a little mud, basically. I'm just kind of, I want kind of like a muddy dark color. You don't want to have a lot of water on your brush, but you do need to have enough water that you get the paint to move. It is harder to make mud when you're using all the transparent colors, though. So if you're like, man, I can't make brown with this, it's because your colors are transparent, and it just makes it a little more difficult. The color isn't as important as how dark or light we have it. More about the value here. This will do. And I am just going to kind of tap right across here. I'll do one just so you can kind of see the shape. It just kind of makes this like teardrop kind of shape, like a deer's hoof. But if I tap it really light, I just get the hint of like of treetops. You could do that if you want to put some burnt sienna or burnt umber on your palette and add it in. You totally could. I just want to stick with what I've been using. And then over here, I'm going to want to get a little more aggressive. If you're really having a hard time getting brown, grab whatever red and yellow you have on your palette and add that in, because that's going to make an orange, and orange is probably the closest saturated color to brown. And just by mixing, I had kind of a dirty brush and mix the magenta and the yellow together, and then the green that was on my brush was enough to make it brown. Limited palette will really teach you how to mix colors, which I think is good. If I have a lot of paint on my brush, I'll start stippling where I want it really thick, and then I'll start stippling higher where I want a more spacious trees. A little fussy though. I don't know if I really like fussing around with this little brush that much, but at least I'll have some trees that are different shaped. It's good for that far away scruff anyway. Alright, I'm done with that.
And it's fuzzy.
Yeah. Now we're gonna go, well, let's do our liner brush and do some foreground trees. Like a liner brush because you can paint for a long time without reloading. And just picking up some mud from my palette. And these are gonna start, I'll start these kind of down here. I'm actually gonna make a little line for where I want to start them off. As a bonus, I can cover up kind of some of that mess that I made. And I'm making these a little bit more exaggerated than the reference photo because I have a big old mess to cover up behind there. So that is can help you put your tree, figure out where to put your trees, wherever it looks the messiest, wherever you want to cover something up. How many people do we have hanging out in chat today?
We got 287. There was some more earlier, but people had to leave for school and work and sleep and life responsibilities.
Ah, yes. And I'm going to use a damp, clean brush to just kind of pull out some of that color near the trunks, just to give it some nice shadow. do a couple little trees back here. And again, I'm just going to pull out the color on the bottom for a little shadow. And I'm going to work in this area here. I'm going to try to make myself some brown with the colors I've already used. So I'm going to grab yellow and my Quin red.
Excuse me.
Add some blue to that. The air's been so dry. It's coffee.
Oh, well, and I got a tickle in the back of my throat.
Oh, yeah. I thought I was going to sneeze a few minutes ago. I'm getting the bottom of this mountain here, just with this inky dark color that I made. Just going to drag it up with the side of my brush. And just sort of going to flick up some treetops or whatever. I'm not going to get too specific with it because I just want it to fade into the background for the most part. I'm staring at psychedelic colors all morning and my eyes are starting to go a little psychedelic, yeah. I gotta wrap this up. Starting to see cross-eyed with all these bright backgrounds. All right, and maybe throw in just a few other little scruffy branches.
Rolf, the paint on the mixing area of your palette looks very thick compared to the paint I managed to mix with my pan set. Do the two paints end up thicker when mixed with water?
I don't think so. I mean, I do think there's general quality. Like the higher the quality, the easier it is to get the paint out of the pans. With this palette, you have a larger wells that they go into, and also M-gram paints contain honey, so it keeps it from drying completely out. So you can add a little honey or glycerin to like any two paints you have, and it will help them stay a little bit fresher in the palette longer, so that you can easily get them out to paint with them. But it's just a quality thing, and having room to mix, I think. So maybe if you had like a ceramic dish you can mix in, it would help you be able to pull a little bit more out. I want to pull a little shadow color underneath this mountain area. There, and let's take the tape off that and see what we have. I kind of maybe want to spatter a little bit of dark color right in there to give it a little, maybe some hanging on deciduous leaves. Let me grab my toothbrush, do that a little bit. Hopefully it's not a terrible idea. We'll see. Making up some mud, using up some paint. I like it just fine. Okay, so we're wrapping up here. If anybody has any questions, just let Sarah know so she can let me know. I'm just going to dry this wet paint and take the tape off so we can see how it turned out. And if you want to paint some more winter scenes, check out my friend Angela's new course for winter landscapes for the low price of $30. And she's a wonderful teacher. I think you'd really enjoy her work. Link is in the video description. And to let you know, if you do purchase that class or any other of her courses, after clicking that link, I do earn a percentage of the sale. So I thank you for your support. And I'm sure Angela thanks you too. I met her because we both taught classes at Craftsy. And she helped me a lot. All right. And there is that one. I will take photos. I lost my I have no idea where my smartphone is, and that's usually what I take my pictures with.
You'll
so
find it.
As soon as I find that, I will take pictures and post them to my blog, because I don't know, the webcam can be a little deceiving. But we'll see the pictures we just finished. So there's that last one with the white in the sky. there's that one, our first landscape we did. And then this one that we did where we used a little bit of an ink and a brush pen just for funsies. And hopefully you enjoyed that. If you have any questions, you can ask them real quick right now or leave them in the video description. And I'm sorry, the comments after the replay is not live anymore. And I will answer them there. And I just want to show you the difference between just doing the water for the light and then doing the white, the bleed proof white for your white if you need to go back in after and alter anything. So hopefully you enjoyed this. Please give me a thumbs up if you liked it. Supplies can be found linked up in the video description to our sponsor jerrysartorama.com, and I have a coupon code in the description too, so make sure you use that if you're doing any shopping. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, until Black Friday, happy crafting.
Thanksgiving
yes,
to all
happy
of our
Thanksgiving.
United States watchers.
Absolutely. Yeah, time for some food, folks, and fun.